Says we are live.
We are
Let
out
me.
there for the world to see.
Yes. Yeah, we are. It's connecting to
Hope
streaming.
every,
We're about to go.
hope everybody's doing okay while we get our systems up and running here on a Friday.
Yes. We want to thank everyone for joining us for another Microsoft Unboxed Pod. This is number 5 of our podcast. We had our big 2024 predictions pod slash recap of last year. That was a long one. I doubt that this one's going to be that long, but I mean, hey, we can ramble. We're going to mostly cover CES. Microsoft had some news despite not officially being at CES. They were unofficially there all over the place. We're going to cover job cuts. We're going to cover some uh, of a lot of Microsoft's partners doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the news cycle this time around with new chipsets from Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, partnerships with between Microsoft and some rivals. We're going to be talking about Windows 10 getting life breathed back into it as well. Uh, Windows 11 testing some USB improvements, and I think that's going to be the majority of our reporting. So, without further ado, let's get into our first story. I believe you brought this one up. You want to start talking about it? Let people know what we're talking about.
Well, let's kind of jump right in. I'm going to hit with the first one I have on the list here. Unfortunately, we have another round of layoffs here happening with a lot of companies. We thought the 2023 layoffs that some went in March, they lasted basically March through July of 2023. We thought the layoffs were over, but unfortunately, here getting started in 2024, we have seen that some of the larger companies are still letting workers go. One of the latest this week was Twitch. If you're a streamer, a gamer, or just like watching streaming content, most of you are familiar with Twitch. They have laid off quite a bit of their workforce, claiming that it was not sustainable to keep the current workforce on, that they had kind of overhired people during the pandemic. We've heard this before. They overhired when things were popular and that they were running out of capacity of where they expect their business to be in 3 to 4 years. So they thought the best option was to slim down now. Now, I'm going to have a counter offer to this. There was a very popular streamer on YouTube that interviewed the CEO of Twitch, Dan, several months ago. I'm not going to call the streamer's name, but he had talked about that Twitch was looking various ways to cut costs. And one of the ways that they were looking to cut costs was to turn over the encoding process of your stream to where it works on the customer PC and not on the Twitch servers. For those that don't understand what encoding is, if you have a tough internet connection, if you're using say a cellular internet connection, that allows the stream to be transcoded into a better format to fit your device and your internet connection so you get the best quality stream possible. So there may be 3 or 4 different formats of your stream being produced while you're streaming. So that does take a certain amount of servers, and the CEO said that right at that point in time that encoding was their largest expense. Well, here's the thing. At CES, Twitch and OBS kind of came out with a pseudo partnership and said, "Hey, we have this new feature in OBS that if you have a 40 series graphics card, you can stream to Twitch. We will detect your settings and you do your own encoding on your PC." So it's interesting to me that Twitch comes out and says, well, we won't need as many encoding servers. We're cutting that budget, but you're also getting rid of your workers too. So to me, that's a little bit bothersome about possibly, the rumors of Twitch being in trouble have been swirling for the last couple years with new CEOs, and then they had some disagreements with how streamers were getting paid and what the revenue share was and what the revenue share could be or what it should be. I hope Twitch is not in deeper trouble here than what they're showing.
Yeah, I think this is on par though for Amazon. I think Twitch is just one of many Amazon businesses that will be highlighted, that were
True, true.
highlighted last year and going throughout 2024. This is again part of a broader initiative of most companies. I think we're about to list a couple more that have also been doing it. It's just again everyone, and that's including everyone, thought couldn't see beyond the pandemic, and nor should they have. This was a once in a lifetime event for many generations. So to figure out, the new norm, a lot of people kind of were overzealous. I mean, like I said, we see many companies, a lot of people in general, people took up certain hobbies and things that weren't sustainable when you have a normal workforce, like making your own bread. I don't know so many people who have to go back into the office are still making their own bread. Companies were in the midst of making your own bread situations where they thought people were going to be working at home, so the metaverse was going to be a thing. They thought they could, hire a bunch of people to work remotely, and that would be sufficient enough because that was going to be the new norm, and that they would be able to sustain the consumerism that people were having when they were stuck at home. The times that they would go out and do other activities that weren't necessarily consumption activities was mitigated. Like all that was put on pause. So they just thought, hey, we'll give them more streaming content. We'll give them more streaming services. We will give them more, uh, digital marketplaces to buy stuff. Like everything that you could do in the home, we'll just give them more and more and more and more, and that would just continue to keep going. It won't. There will never be a drop off. And we saw that roughly almost a year and a couple months afterwards, that all came to a head, and now we're all trying to figure out how do we balance being at home sometimes with this new way of shopping? I mean, malls took it. They were already taking a hit when Amazon showed up. Now that people became accustomed to getting their food deliveries, toiletries, all that kind of stuff delivered straight to the door, they're finding that being a more convenient way of than just going in, trying clothes on, or buying food in person, dealing with parking and driving and gas, stuff like that. We're trying to figure out where we're at. Businesses are doing the same. I'm not trying to give them any excuse. There should, have been some oversight as far as like scalability for a lot of these companies, and I am always siding with workers over employers when it comes to situations like this. I said all that to say I don't believe Twitch is going to be going away anytime soon. There are $1 million marketplaces that are alive because of this, but I do see Amazon, trimming the fat on other things. I think Panos Panay might be frustrated soon enough when his hardware division starts to see, they have quick expectations and turnarounds on certain things, and he doesn't get the same sort of runway that he had at Microsoft, because again they're going to need to produce fairly quickly because Amazon's constricting itself. We're going to move on from this topic, but we do want to note that Google recently laid off people across their hardware division as well, particularly some of those that were involved with the Made by Google, or the, I guess, AKA Pixel devices, some of the Nest stuff. So, we will see a contraction in that. Maybe we don't see another Pixel tablet, but I doubt they're going to get rid of the phones. They seem to be doing well, selling much better than previous Pixels have before. And with the advent of Bard, this is just another way for them to kind of push that into the billion plus users that they already have. So that was one of them. The other one, I think you mentioned, what was the other company that was laying off people?
Discord, the popular chat service that a lot of gamers use and a lot of non-gamers use. Just content creators in general tend to use Discord. They had laid off 17% of their workforce this week, so there's another cut there because Discord was used as a communication platform for some companies during the pandemic. So again, they overhired and probably over infrastructured, if there is such a term there. Um, that a little bit too. So they're looking to trim the fat. Like you said, I think we've got to, good or bad, find what the balance is between doing so much digitally and having so much done for us on a digital level to being able to walk in stores, produce things, get things done because there's so many products out there now that are the Swiss Army knife of products. You think about Microsoft Teams. Teams always comes to mind when I think of this. During the pandemic, Microsoft was just adding extensions and features, in that left and right. So was Zoom and some of the others, but Teams really comes to mind. To the point that Teams got really fat. It was kind of slow, kind of sluggish before they did this last update and, reworked the framework, but it had so much stuff going in it that you didn't need all these other products. You just went to Teams. And I know my statement just plays into what, some of the regulators are wanting to get at that, hey, Microsoft needs to segregate Teams from Office. But we've got to find where that balance is of, you know, how many people do we need to get the job done versus how much of it can we get done digitally? And unfortunately, there's going to be a good side to that. The bad side is part of trimming the fat is letting some of the workers go too.
Yeah. One last thing on that Google letting people go. We've written on our site, if you want to go check it out, a parallel between what Google did or is doing this month versus what Microsoft did the first quarter of last year, where they got rid of their hardware or they're trimming back the employees in their hardware division. And they are shuttering some of, if not most of their AR ambitions and leaning on partners to kind of move forward with that. So I think they're stopping the development of Google Glass in-house devices. I think they will let the platform be licensed out, and other people can make things that utilize that platform. Same as with Hololens. Like Hololens, Microsoft mixed reality may not be going forward on Windows 10 or 11 devices or 12 or whatever in the future. But if Samsung wants to use it, I'm sure Microsoft will customize a version of that platform for their devices. They just won't be making any for HoloLens or supporting it in Windows. Same thing for Google Glass and AR. So we're seeing a shrinkage right before Apple decides to jump into the big pond or small pond, wherever it is right now. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but let's move on to our next topic, which is
I wanted to bring up one more thing.
go ahead.
Um, when the shrinking of the hardware division, just to be clear, I didn't see anything. Did you see anything about necessarily any products being? Because when I say products, I'm thinking smart speakers, the Google routers, the Google tablets. The consumer-based, the non-phone consumer devices. I didn't see any signs of any product yet being eliminated. Did you?
No, no, there was only shrinkage of the employees, which I in turn equate that to support. I think you have an overhead of employees that are there to support these devices, and I think you're going to have less support for these devices, which means going forward, you probably slim down some of those device lines. I'm not saying that they're going to do it this year or even next year, but I do think if you are taking employees off of building those devices and supporting those devices to a certain number, it's just easier to slim down that product line to allow the current number of employees to support that in every capacity. If you have phones, tablets, smart speakers, dumb speakers, and all kinds of other things, and you don't have the number of employees to help keep up with that development and support development over the upcoming whatever release cycles there are, if you trim that down to just phones, tablets, and a handful of smart speakers, whatever employee level you're at, they can now focus all their attention on those several devices and do that 7-year support cycle like they're talking about for the Pixel Pro and things like that. So again, to your point, to make sure that everyone's clear, we're not conspiracy theorists, we're not trying to throw out bad information. There has not been an official trimming of devices like Microsoft did with their Surface line from Google yet. But we do know Google is apt to trim stuff, even when they do have the support numbers. So you take it for what it
Stadia.
is. Oh, there you go again. You just love stomping on that beating that dead horse, don't you?
I got to.
Man, someone from Stadia is going to reach out, or someone who used to work from Stadia is going to reach out to us soon. It's gonna have to be the On Stadia podcast of some sort, unboxing the state. We should do a documentary and figure out like let's talk to some people behind the scenes and just figure out what went wrong with Stadia so badly, so quickly. Let's talk about gaming. What's our next headline?
Let's see what we got here,
I think
folks.
it was the Dell one that you were going to get into.
Yes, Dale had given us quite a bit to talk about this week at CES. I'm the gamer. No offense to my buddy Kareem here, but I'm kind of the gamer on staff. And
Yep.
Alienware, as normal, produced the next line of Alienware laptops. In particular, the M16 is probably the most popular of the models that most people will get. It was available yesterday. In fact, I checked out Dell's website. It was available for $16.99. You had the typical bump in specs with the 14th gen CPU being put in there. You had up to the 4090 CPU. You had, let's see, it was trimmed down just a little bit. I You really can't tell a whole lot in the photos, but they did trim down the base chassis just a little bit. They took some people call it the step off the back, some people call it the bump. The bump off the back is gone, so that narrowed down the chassis a little bit, took a little weight out of it. Um, for the 16, you had it was starting at 16.99, and then they had the M18, which is kind of the big boy, the powerhouse, the group that pulls, get this, 270 watts, capable of 270 watts in a laptop. Now, when did we ever think that we would get to the point that a laptop could legitimately pull 270 watts? Now, that's with a Core i9 14th gen HX CPU with a 4080, 4090 GPU, and now you can get up to 10 terabytes of storage on that M18, and Dell is promising better thermals for overall overclocking performance. Now, folks, if you're pulling 270 watts in a reasonably thin gaming laptop, we really don't see a whole lot of what we used to call the thick boys anymore. If you're pulling 270 watts, you've got a Core i9 14th gen HX CPU, you better have some cooling in there somewhere. You're going to be gaming on a frying pan, so I hope they have worked that out. Now, the Alienware Aurora R16 has been out for a little while. Basically, there's not been any announced updates yet because they said they were waiting on partners to, finish up theirs. And when I say partners, NVIDIA came out with the 4070 Super GPUs, like we have seen the Super lineup in the 20 series a couple years ago. So the 4070 Super, and I believe there's a 4080 Super, those were put in the Alienware Aurora R16. And there are a few of those on the Dell website currently. So if you're a gamer and you're out there looking for a powerful GPU, powerful CPU, I recommend you take a look at those. They did also enter something that I thought was pretty unique. OLED gaming and monitors is becoming a thing because OLED has some of the greatest contrast ratios from dark to light that you're going to get. So Alienware came out with the 32-inch 4K OLED monitor that is an OD OLED monitor to help reduce reflection. It's the first monitor to offer Dolby Vision HDR at 240 hertz with a 0.03 milliseconds gray to gray response time. It was available yesterday. It was on their website for $11.99 for what you get. Not a bad price there. There's also, for those that don't want to spend quite that much money or maybe don't have quite that amount of space, there is a 27-inch model that came out that is 360 hertz that is also available on their website for $8.99. So that's worth checking out. And last but not least, Alienware finally jumped into the wireless gaming peripheral market with an Alienware Pro wireless mouse that has a four kilohertz wireless polling response time and an 8 kilohertz wired response time. It's under 60 grams, makes it lightweight, and it is meant for esports gamers. It was available yesterday on their website for 149, and we also have a matching keyboard, the Alienware Pro Wireless Gaming Keyboard that is 75% of the normal form factor with custom laser keys. Wonder what that might be. Custom laser key switches with a 40G actuation force, and they had two silicon layers built into those keys to help stop echoing, and switches can be hot swapped with most 5-pin and 3-pin switches for those that are interested in customizing their switches. It was also available yesterday for $199.99. So what I took from this was we got a quick refresh of the primary gaming lineup from Dell. Got a few spec bumps. They trimmed a few models. They trimmed the chassis down on a few. We still didn't get any updates in the popular 14-inch range that everybody seems to be coming out with. There is an Alienware 14-inch. I would have loved to have seen a small update there, but the big boys of the lineup, the M16, the M18, they got their updates, and it's interesting to see that Dell is finally getting into the wireless peripherals. I know I was doing a little shopping over Christmas, kind of looking at what they had available and thought about making a purchase. And was interesting to find they really didn't have any wireless gaming competitive mice and keyboards. So it's nice to see that they have entered that market.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that story. You covered it pretty well. I will chime in before we get into our big CES coverage with one quick story of that would happened, I think, over the weekend, kind of cover it going into this week, which is Microsoft and Incase came to a partnership. This is following what you're talking about as far as peripherals. Uh, Microsoft, or I think the design or Microsoft keyboards and accessories and whatnot, was one of the casualties that we talked about of last year's slimming of its hardware profile. So when they said that they were going to shut down some of the hardware team, the people who create, I don't know, it's been what, 30 years, 35 years of hardware for like, Microsoft keyboards, the ergonomic keyboard, the ergonomic mouse, those kind of things. That all got basically shuttered. It wasn't a big news story. It should have been, especially if you're a fan of those kind of things. But it looks like they have a new partnership with this company called Incase, which will now be designing those same devices. So if you're a fan of the Microsoft design language, like the ergonomic keyboards and things of those natures, Incase will be basically just rebranding those devices. They'll be made exactly the same. The only thing that'll be different about those, like the wireless desktop 900 or wired desktop, if you're someone who needs something wired, the Bluetooth number keypad, designer compact keyboard, which I'm a fan of, the designer Bluetooth keyboard, which is the full elongated one. That is, I think they're just called what are they called? The Bluetooth mouse, which are kind of the nicer minimalistic ones that kind of they paired off with a lot of the Surface stuff. They was called them modern mobile mouse. I take that back. Or even the newly designed for Teams certified devices, which I think was about 2021, right after the height of the pandemic, which were these devices that basically had Teams buttons built into them. The only difference between that and the Microsoft ones is just the logo. It seems like you'll be, instead of having the traditional four windowed Microsoft logo, you'll get the encased, I guess, leaf. And again, for those of you who, the audio track is another one, the modern webcam, modern USB-C speaker, which again, I have all of these. I think they're great. And if you're looking sad that you can't get them from Microsoft, you can go to Encase. They're not available just yet. We don't know when the time frame is, but they do say the first half of 2024. So should be hopefully soonish for them to start selling them again. So again, it won't be on Microsoft Store to find those devices, but you can go to Encase if you want any of those kind of things. Again, just small story that happened alongside this. So Microsoft devices are still being sold just by somebody else now.
It's pretty cool that they allowed that just to keep that product line moving a
Mhm.
little bit, just to make things available. And
Yeah, I agree.
before we jump off this gaming topic here, I just realized that one of my headlines are not in our book of notes. I wanted to give a quick shout out to our good friends over at Lenovo that help us out with reviews and allow us to produce this content. They also came out with their 2024 models at CES, and I didn't want to just talk about Alienware and leave them completely out. So just to give you a quick rundown, they had a few more models available and updated than Alienware did. They really focused this year on the LCQ models, and I'm not going to call out each model of the alphabet soup of the LCQs, but the LCQs are considered the model line right below the Legion line. The Legion line is always considered their premium line, with the LCQs being a little bit below that. Maybe you give up a little feature here, a feature there, but I've had a chance to check out a couple of those LCQs. There's really not a big difference unless you're a hardcore gamer. Maybe there's some RGB that's not as fancy on the LCQs as there is the Legion model, but they came out with a new 7i, which I'm looking forward to getting a hold of, as well as the Lenovo Legion 5i, which is the popular 16-inch model that they have had for a few years now. That's kind of your best bang for buck sitting in there for what you get versus what you pay. The 5i is very popular. They also re-upped on the Lenovo Legion Tower 7i and 5i, giving them the 14th gen CPU bumps that everybody likes. Let's see what else we have. They also introduced on the 7i something called the cold front hyper thermal solution, which is a thermal solution that takes the air path through a different way through the chassis when cooling the laptop. And from what my best understanding is, it keeps everything cooler. Of course, we know how, getting laptops hot is not necessarily what we want to do, but they are able to give us 175 watts in extreme mode on the 5i and 190 watts. I got that backwards. 175 watts on the Lenovo Legion 7i and 190 watts max power on the 5i. So it's I don't really know exactly what cold front is. I have heard and read that it's a different vapor chamber. I'll have to reach out to our representative and see what we can come up with. And we also know that the 9i reaches up to 250 watts. So there's another 250-watt TDP in extreme mode. I believe the Alienware was 270. So let's see. Pricing and availability on those. The Lenovo Legion 9i, which is the water cooled model at an eye watering $4,300, is available.
Oof.
Yeah, is available now, January 2024. With the rest of these models, the 7i, the 5i, and the Slim 5 hitting the market, just give you a rough figure, sometime between March and April. And the towers are also hitting the market in April. So I just kind of wanted to give everybody, I didn't want to leave our buddies at Lenovo out. I kind of wanted to give everybody a heads up because I know not everybody likes Alienware, not everybody likes Lenovo. So at least you have some options.
Agreed. Yeah. With that being said, we're going to get into a brief rundown of some of the other partners at CES that Microsoft had, which starts with actually, let's get into the Microsoft first part of the news, which is Copilot. I think AI was the buzzword of CES 2024. Everyone put it in everything. I'm sure there are a pair of socks somewhere that have AI in them. Someone's walking around the stage or the open floor with them on. Who knows? But we had mentioned this,
Hey,
I think, last week.
they'll be telling you if your feet stink or not, so be careful.
I'm sure mine would be going off saying, "Hey, time to change your socks, buddy. Time to change your socks." Um, yeah, we talked last week about this about the Copilot button. I believe this was going into CES. Microsoft wanted to get that news out there quickly before they started having partners show them off. And so we just kind of touch upon it again because you had a little bit of late breaking news about it not being required anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, I saw something this morning where just to give a little background, there Microsoft keeps a standard of what a Windows PC should be. And you reported last week that the Copilot key was now becoming a thing in the new Windows keyboards. And I saw something this morning where Microsoft just kind of changed their stance a little bit, added a little bit to it, said the Copilot key will not be a requirement of a Windows standard laptop.
Yeah. From what we gathered, I think Samsung may be the one of only 2 partners that have actual devices with the key on it. It looks like the key is gonna replace the menu key, for a lot of Windows devices, so, I think you and I were talking about how Microsoft should have sold this, off mic, making it mandatory would definitely force everyone to eventually use it, uh just kinda like how they kind of fumbled Cortana being sort of usable, not usable, could be ignored, could not be ignored in search situations. It just kind of falls apart. If they'd have done the Apple brute force method of, "Hey, everyone's gotta use it. This is the new thing going forward," it could possibly be like the Ruin where people just get used to it at some point, and it becomes a utility. Um, with that being said, the way Microsoft should have sold this versus saying like, "Hey, here's a new button that does new things like that," uh, especially when Copilot currently is not at its peak, I don't think, is to say that, hey, how many people use the menu key? To be honest with you, I see it on every keyboard I have, every laptop I get has that menu key juxtaposed to the Windows key on the other side. I use the Windows key more often, not very often because I have a mouse most of the time, and they're keyboard commands that can bring up the start menu much faster than me reaching over to it sometimes. Um, but how often is that menu key being used? And if it's not being used that often by a lot of people, how would you like a new beefed up search button? It's just, for people who are used to Chromebooks will know that, the Google Assistant button is on there. People who need to search for files don't necessarily have to, move their mouse down to the search bar. If they disable the search bar in general and they go to the start menu for the same thing, they can start reducing a lot of redundancy in their search currently, and having it tied to that one button means it works when you use it in Microsoft Store, when using the File Explorer, when you're in different apps, that button is always mapped to search in general. Copilot just happens to be the beefed up version of it. So that Copilot will now have a context to when you're pressing that button, what app are you looking at? What app window is being highlighted? Let me bring up information on that thing. I think that's Microsoft's best way of getting that button used and more often, especially like you said, if they force people to use it. Now we know businesses have other reasons on why they don't want that button. Lenovo probably has come back to Microsoft saying, "Hey, you can't force us to use this because this could hurt our sales of current devices as well as older devices that we sell in fleet to businesses." So if Microsoft's looking for them to license out those licenses on those devices and they can't sell them, it's a lose-lose for everybody, which is probably why they're backtracking at it. But at CES this year, Copilot was a button that was introduced on a couple devices, will be on a lot more devices going forward, I believe, after the first quarter when more manufacturers start getting out their second wave of new devices that they probably didn't show up at CES. Um, I want to see the Copilot button in use. I also want to see the next version of Copilot, which makes it a more on-device useful tool and platform. So, what do you think? We'll wrap that up.
Copilot to me, the Copilot button to me is a little bit of a big deal. I go back all the way back to the MS-DOS days, where, and that's how we started. If you needed to find your documents, for example, Microsoft Word has been using the DOC file extension for decades. You would always have to type in the dir command, dir space star.doc, and then how do you want it listed /a/s/p, and choose how you wanted, you know, those files to be listed, and that would do a search of your hard drive for all of your documents. Wouldn't give you any information about them, but you would see all of your documents listed there in the tree. Now, I could see this being a wonderful thing if you can hit that Copilot button, and let's use a Copilot prompt. Let's say, find me all of my Microsoft Word documents from that I updated last week, and you get a list of those documents. That is something useful that I think consumers, students, and businesses could take advantage of just by hitting the button. You get that search bar, but if that search bar can simply say, find me a list of the best streaming software for 2024, and it goes out to the web and you get a result right there in the search bar. I don't want it pulling up browser and giving me some funny rework of Edge. Show me those results and let me interact with those results and then lead myself to the browser. As we've talked about a couple times already, the existing Copilot is nothing but a reworked browser window. I want to see it if they're going to give me the button, integrate it into the operating system, where, as you just said, it is a one place, one search, one find, one get.
Agreed. And moving on to our next topic, to help power all of those searches are some of these new chips. Again, we are going to talk briefly. I'm going to try and, because we're going to try and wrap up some of this time through some of the chip manufacturers who came out at CES to kind of talk about their new devices or their new chipset offerings. I think the first one that we have up is Intel, who was basically you know, I would say, for lack of a better term, fighting for dear life amongst the Qualcomms, the AMDs, and NVIDIA kind of things. You know, basically saying like, hey, we're all creating NPUs as well, Intel. Like, this isn't a big thing that you can hang your hat on. So you need to step it up and do better. What Intel came up with was at their 14th gen devices. Some of the features at a glance are Performance Core P, which is the highest performance CPU core built by Intel. It's designed to handle single thread and lightly threaded or burst workloads at such as 4K gaming and 3D design, a lot better than they've previously done. They have an efficient core as well, which is designed to handle multi-threaded and background tasks such as minimized browsing tabs, IT services, cloud syncing, leaving P cores free to kind of deliver more of that performance thing. So they're kind of splitting uh, how that works. They've had a P and an E core for some time, but I think they're offering more of those. They have also performance hybrid architecture, which is going to integrate the two cores of microarchitectures into a single die. I think that is also a first, though, which will help prioritize and distributing workloads so that the speed at which those two transfer data and information should be much faster. Is Intel Thread Director, which, again, this is a layer on top of that to kind of organize where those kind of threads are being processed and how fast and how quickly and which one prioritizes the other. So that's going to help optimize that. They have PCIe 5.0 up to 16 lanes, which again, that'll offer readiness for up to 32 gigabytes of transfer for fast access to discrete graphic storage and peripheral devices. They have PCIe 4.0 up to 4 lanes, which will offer up to 16 GTs for that for fast access. It will support up to DDR5 56 MTs for like the latest in memory and capacity speeds. They'll have a support for up to DDR4 as well, 3200, and they'll have L3 and L2 cache support as well, smart cache for these Intel devices. So you'll be able to store a lot more of your background processes uh, before they start to crash or conflict with each other. Intel is also improving on something called Deep Learning Boost, which accelerates AI interfaces to improve performance for deep learning workloads. So, for those of you who are going to be doing, uh, using those P series devices for, massive computing or translating a ton of data, you have support for that. There's also Intel Adaptive Boost technology, Intel's Thermal Velocity Boost as well, which I believe they started with 13 gen and should be better at 14 gen. So hopefully those thermal boosts can help lower, because I know 12 and 13 gen devices ran a bit hot. If we're going to be working on efficiency, hopefully 14 gen kind of addresses a lot of those. Then there's stuff like Intel's Extreme Memory Profile 3.0, which simplifies memory overclocking and dynamic memory boost, amongst a bunch of other things that they're going to be doing. But the other big thing from Intel's 14 gen is the NPUs that are built into this. Again, this is all to power AI going forward and some of those machine learning aspects of software. So Microsoft's, introducing Windows Studio into more devices. I think last year the only ones that had it were ARM devices. So now you'll be able to get that, blurred background, isolated noise canceling features, all of the camera tweaks and adjustments to, normal five megapixel cameras can be improved through software versus having, a 10 or 20 megapixel lens that, a lot of us would like. You'll be able to handle all that stuff through software. And a lot of these video conferencing or streaming platforms that utilize a lot of these layers and effects and basically CPU intensive workloads will now be able to offload that to that NPU, which will free you up to do a bunch of other, multitasking with the CPU and GPUs on board. So that was Intel's big push for the 14 gen. We're going to see a lot of devices come out with that. I think Lenovo's already announced a bunch. You mentioned with Dell and Lenovo's gaming. These are all going to be powered mostly by these 14 gen devices. So that's Intel in a nutshell. Any quick words on that before we move on?
I know you're talking about specific devices, and I just want to bring a quick one up. I do not have the spec sheet right here in front of me, but the Lenovo Think Center, it is coming later this year. It is running the 14th gen CPU, and the reason I bring that up is there's another company out there that makes a device that looks very similar to the Lenovo Think Center, runs that other operating system out there made by the Fruit Company, and it looks a whole lot like the Apple Mac Studio. But I think that's going to be a hot seller for a war. Your headline here says, for gamers and creators. I know a lot of people that, they buy these CPUs and they're either focused on, as you said, the AI workload or some sort of development workload or a gaming workload. But looking at the Think Center, I think that would be also a good place for just the creator, because it
Yeah.
actually, according to Lenovo's spec sheet, I do have in my notes here, has a GPU in it. So it's going to be interesting to see how these companies are starting to leverage this, because we've got workloads are getting bigger. We're wanting efficiency because we're wanting battery life out of it. That's ultimately what we're looking for. And then we're also throwing that AI on top of it and figuring out how are we going to process that. So,
Yeah.
as you said, Intel is keeping their head above water, but it's going to be interesting to see who picks that up, because Nvidia, as you mentioned, has thrown their hat into the pot to say, hey, we're going to help with this AI workload too. So, how did these companies, Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, play together to make all this work?
It's a good question. And for anybody who's going to go out shopping this year, just to be clear, not every Intel 14 Gen is capable of the same kind of performance, obviously.
Right.
This is why they have different series. You're going to be looking, if you're a gamer or content creator, someone who's going to be video encoding or uh, rendering and things like that, look for your HX processor. That's the HX series mobile processor, 14 Gen. Those are the ones that support Core i9, and they will also have a 5.8 gigahertz turbo frequency, which is supposed to be about 17% better for gamers. And then for the rest of us plebeians, we'll be looking for the Core U processor. Those are the ones that are basically thin and light ultrabooks that prioritize battery over raw performance. But even those because of the two P cores and eight efficiency cores, are supposed to be able to kind of do a little bit more power, but really draw out that battery life. So again, HX if you're a gamer, U if you are a normal person, and P if you are someone who deals with machine learning, uh, more AI server workloads kind of thing. So those are the ones you're going to kind of look out for this year. Moving on, we have NVIDIA, as we were just saying, is kind of also competing for space on your desktop or your laptop somewhere. And they are going to say that they're going to be delivering generative AI through their raw GPU performance. They introduced the GeForce 4 the RTX 40 Super series, which is, I believe, AI. It's supposed to be able to generate AI videos. So if you're going to get into deepfakes, things like that, here's your secret GPU to use for that kind of thing. Just don't tell anybody you get caught. It's supposed to deliver over 1.5x faster on images and 1.7x faster than the, I guess, current 3080 Ti. The Tensor cores on super GPUs deliver up to 836 trillion AI operations per second. So that sounds impressive. I am not huge on AI video or gaming, so someone's going to have to follow up with that and let us know if that actually is more impressive or less impressive than it sounds. The mobile workstations with RTX GPUs can now run NVIDIA's AI enterprise software. They're going to be basically, you're going to have more access through devices to tap into some of that really cool, really core, expensive enterprise AI stuff. The Tensor RT and NVIDIA Rapids for like the software stuff will be powered by some of these mobile devices, which include, I think, the RTX 800 A800 40 gigabyte GPUs as well. Uh, they are also going to be offering some software to work alongside this, which I believe is the AI Workbench. It's a unified tool that allows developers to quickly create, test, and customize pertinent generative AI models and large language models. It'll be released in beta later this month, so you'll be able to kind of try that out. There's also going to be I think more people have access to NVIDIA's ACE microservices, which are also releasing alongside all of this, I believe, at the end of this month to help generative AI speech and animation models to enable developers to add intelligent dynamic lighting avatars to games. With Chat RTX and NVIDIA tech demos, you'll be able to kind of connect a lot of these large language models to uh, the the animations that you create uh, more seamlessly versus having to do through a lot of necessary code or whatnot. So, if you're an animator, an at-home animator, say you were fortunate enough not to have to go back into the studio after the pandemic, these are some of the devices that will help ease up your workload a little bit, or at least allow you to do things much quicker. So that's NVIDIA's kind of pitch for its CES thing, which is AI and interpreting AI through their GPU, their heavy GPUs. What do you think?
I want to throw in, I'll keep it 30 seconds. What did we used to use GPUs for just a year and a half ago? We used them for the mining, and everybody, was buying the GPUs to do the mining.
Yes.
So that's what we were using those cores and those CUDA cores and everything for. Now, we were just talking about putting the AI workload on the CPU. And I'm sitting here most days like you are, and I'm, working in a little bit of code. I'm doing a little compiling, and I've got 30, 40 windows open, and, social media is open. But what piece of your PC, laptop, or desktop sits there most of the day idle unless you're doing some video editing or some sort of rendering process or a little bit of gaming or some sort of streaming. But even then, if you're streaming YouTube during your workday, that is not GPU intensive. So NVIDIA, I think, is onto something here because I've always wondered why do GPUs not do more work for us while they're idle? Because they spend most of their life on the average person's desk idle. For those of us that just work in productivity, they're idle. So Put NVIDIA, I think, doing the right thing. Make the software to put the AI workload over there. Let that GPU do that work. Take that load off of that CPU. I think that's the smart move. I've always wondered why our GPUs didn't do more for us anyway.
Yeah, it sounds very Seinfeld-esque of you. What is with the GPUs? For those of you who don't watch Seinfeld, I apologize for that poor impersonation. Moving
I
on,
thought it was pretty
we
good.
thank you. We have AMD. Not last but not least, Qualcomm was there in in the background, but these are the major ones that kind of came out, and this Qualcomm had their heyday last month. So AMD is the last of the big tent poles with their announcement. Let me pull that up for us on screen. Here we go. For those of you listening, just give me 1 second. We have AMD expanding again, AI being the key word with their Ryzen's processors and the AMD Radeons are, I believe, the ones that they were releasing this time around is the AMD Radeon RX 7600 XT graphics card and expanded its portfolio of desktop mobile processors. They're also bringing the power of a dedicated AI neural processing unit, the NPUs that we've have been finally using as an acronym, to desktop PC processors for the first time with the Ryzen AI to unlock more AI capabilities and improve productivity. AMD partners are, we haven't heard a lot from Microsoft so far with AMD, which we thought we would at this announcement. But AMD is at least highlighting Acer, Asus, Lenovo, HP, and Razer as their main ones for partnering up with Windows 11 powered devices. I don't know about Linux ones for you guys. You'll have to check back with us when we have more information on that. And their handheld gaming efforts will be powered by the AMD Ryzen 8040 series processors, which were first announced, I think, at AMD's AI December event. Um, at the event, they also introduced the introduction of the AMD Ryzen 8000G series, which is another desktop processor, which has up to eight cores and 16 threads for intensive workloads for gamers. Uh, they're also going to be optimizing and prioritizing efficiency with low power draw with these 8000G series processors. They're also going to be taking advantage of the Z4 in architecture, which is, I think, AMD's patented technology for that kind of thing, um, which again should be allow gamers for more impressive visual fidelity. And then for the gaming enthusiasts, if you're not a hardcore gamer, you're someone like perhaps myself who just likes to say that I have a gaming laptop but don't really make use of it. You'll be able to you'll be able to show that off with the AMD Ryzen 5000 series desktop processors, which are built on the AMD Zen 3 architecture, which optimizes performance with higher clock speeds and improved efficiency. AMD extends the series with four new processors led by the AMD Ryzen 7 5700 X3D, which delivers 100 megabytes of on-chip memory to provide power and productivity gains for games and apps. Also added was the AMD Radeon RX 7600 XT graphics card to pair with that. Again, offering faster, smoother visual fidelity for games or apps that use that kind of stuff, like video uh, uh, editing in like maybe DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere. And for games, that also supports ray tracing at 1080p, I believe. And I don't know if it's any higher than that. The new cards feature 16 gigabytes of high-speed GDR GDDR6 memory. So again, you have a much wider capacity for uh, adding all of those gamer elements and rendering frames per second much faster. That was AMD's kind of big thing. Again, they are also having their NPUs. So it'll be interesting to see because in the context of Microsoft, we saw them talk highly and heavily of the Snapdragon, helping them with ARM and making, perhaps thinner, cooler devices using that going forward. We know that they always have their hands tied with Intel as well. The big Wintel days aren't over just yet. But again, we haven't heard them hint at or talk about AMD in almost 2 years since the last time they
2 years.
released, their laptops with AMD as an option. And I wonder if something happened with their partnership that has either soured them or just financially not as viable for them to offer Surface laptops with that, or maybe they just figured, hey, there are enough AMD laptop partners out there, we don't need to be one of them.
You know, two things. One, you bring up a good point there. There are fans on each side of the AMD and the Intel fence. We are very privileged to be able to review products that have both architectures in them and both set up, some with AMD graphics chips and some with NVIDIA graphics chips. And we're lucky enough to be able to have the luxury. I can tell you from my experiences, there are pros and cons to each, depending on what your workload is and what you like and what your budget is at the end of the day for what you want to spend. Um, the one thing I didn't see, since you brought that up with ARM at CES, was I did, if there was a lot of things at CES, if somebody saw this and I didn't, please chime in. Um, we didn't see those ARM powered, or at least a prototype. We didn't see the HP ARM powered prototypes, the Dell ARM powered prototypes of what this new Microsoft architecture, and I'm calling it that because of Copilot and the NPU, what this new Microsoft architecture and partnership is. Because Dell, if you remember, came out right when this announcement was made and says you will see a Dell ARM powered Snapdragon Windows laptop early in 2024. I don't expect it to be on the market yet because we're not even halfway through January. But I found it interesting that we were not seeing the prototypes out everywhere. This is what it's going to be coming April of this year, coming June of this year, coming July of this year. So, are some of our PC manufacturers that Microsoft depends on to push their ambitions rethinking some of what they're doing, or are they just not there yet?
I think, to be honest with you, I think they're sandbagging. They're a bunch of sandbaggers right now. I think the idea is that Microsoft's going to introduce Windows 12 or Windows Infinity, whatever they call the next version of Windows, uh, early on it. I don't know if it's going to be right after build or right before build. I think they're going to introduce it early, and that we have manufacturers sitting on these ARM-powered devices with these Copilot buttons all ready to go for the beginning of school. So they're going to say, hey, here's the new devices that power Windows 12, and they'll be available September or October, whatever time frame right before school starts, end of August, beginning of September. These are the current ones that, if you're a business person, a gamer, creative professional looking to upgrade, that you're not necessarily going to be using all of those AI features right off the bat. You don't necessarily need to buy a new device for those specific things. You don't need a super thin, no fan kind of device because these things probably won't have fans in them. As much as they'll be able to power video editing and stuff like that, they won't be able to do the hardcore stuff or the machine learning or the AI stuff. This is all the like those devices are being announced now for those people, and it won't change. And an ARM version of this won't change that going throughout the year. But I do think that they are sitting on devices so that when Microsoft says, "Hey, we're ready with Windows 12. Here's our Surface devices that are geared towards that'll be ready for that they can come out as a Dell or an HP or an ASUS, say, hey, if you don't want to spend the extra $300-400 market for a Surface device that does it, here's our version of it." And they're just not showing those off right now. I think that's my theory.
So you think they're sitting on the CEO's desk and the CEO is possibly using them and testing them out? We just don't know about it yet.
I'm gonna have to agree. I think Microsoft said, hey, could you do us a favor and not show off these, because they're not ready to show off Windows 12. They still have to finish up whatever they're doing with Windows 11. And like I said, I think when they get ready to announce the Surface Laptop 6 with ARM on it, the Surface Laptop 2 Laptop Studio with an updated ARM version of it, with a Surface Pro with an updated ARM version of it, that's when all these other manufacturers will say, hey, here's our cheaper version or our version that's more customizable than the Microsoft one. They're just not ready to do it just yet because, again, Windows 12, Windows 11 doesn't have all the onboard AI stuff that Microsoft showed off, I think, in April of last year.
True.
And I think when Windows 12 is able to tap into that, when we have more, I think, was it WordPad was one of the things that got AI improvements, when all the apps start to have, start get going with this AI stuff and they're ready to say, here's Windows 12, here are the new devices. They want to have those devices instead of saying, here's the new devices. And it's like, oh, what can you do with them? I don't know, pretty much the same stuff you did with them last time, but with a new button that isn't fully functional. It could hurt the sales of that device because when the button is functional, people are gonna be like, "I already bought a new device that didn't have that button. I didn't need it." Or I bought the device, but I've already, I've disabled that button because it got in the way or didn't do what I needed to, and you've lost that customer on using Windows 12 or buying your device with that button in the future. If you come out and say, "Hey, the button is more functional, it actually works, it does stuff, and here's all the marketing behind it," you could get that person upgrade. So I think they're just waiting. With that
Could
being
be.
said, I think so. We're gonna move on to our next one, which is the most dystopian thing I'd ever seen. It's a video of Windows Teams getting more, I guess, easy to use, so to speak. It's let me see if I can find. I'll pull up the window with this on it because, like I said, it was very unnerving because this woman is using Teams constantly. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it for you. Those of you who are listening, I apologize. I'm just pulling up a video where this woman is, it's a Microsoft Teams inspired video. So, the idea is to focus on Teams, but the way that they kind of show it, she is constantly in a conference meeting and it is a literal nightmare, I would think. But as far as the news is concerned, it's supposed to make, for people who aren't Teams users or subscribers or anything like that. It's supposed to make it easier to access. The whole not having to jump through links or emails or attachments and things of that nature. I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna run it without audio. I'm gonna kind of talk through some of what she's doing. But she's getting up. She's starting her day. She starts off looking at her phone, doing some yoga. Basically, the idea is that she's mobile. She's at her kitchen counter right now, and she hops. The first thing she does is hops on Teams. And like I said, I understand that, but then she gets on Teams on her phone, and which means the shit Teams on her laptop, she had Teams on her phone. Now she's leaving, and again, it's supposed to be like, hey, you can have Teams everywhere. Now she's at a coffee stand and she's back on Teams. I'm like, I do not want this amount of meetings
No,
ever.
no.
We derided email for a long time, but I will take answering emails throughout the day at a coffee shop, at home, even in the shower, versus having to hop on a conference call, even if it's without video. Everywhere. She's left the coffee shop. She's now in a meeting room, and they're all on Teams. Everyone's on Teams, and she hops on her phone to type up a question that will now be presented on the screen in the meeting. It's like the exhibit version of like, hey, you wanted Teams in your team, so we gave you more Teams so that you can Teams everywhere. It's again, she's at, I think she's in her office now, and she's back in that same meeting. It's like the meeting never ended. I get it, Microsoft. I get it, but I think they should have at least had her do different meetings across the week in different outfits and stuff like that. And maybe she takes her meeting on Monday at the coffee shop. She takes her meeting on Tuesday in her office. She takes her meeting Wednesday at home. She takes her meeting Thursday at the gym. Like, yeah, she's in a lot of meetings, but this is the same day. She's at home now. At the end of this video, she's at home and she's still in the meeting. She finally closes her laptop at the end of, well, I guess it was the end of the day.
She's not done yet.
Uh, Again, it's just, I get it, Microsoft. You want people to use Teams. You want it to show how useful it is, but there's just some nuances I think that you're missing. You're like shoving it in everyone's face. Maybe you edit it a little differently, give her some different clothes. But what do you think about the video? And then I'll get into some more details about the actual
Too
update.
much teams. Too much teams. 'Cause to me, like you said, that should have been. I do this on Monday at home. I do this on Tuesday in the office. I do this on Wednesday at the coffee shop. You know, I don't know of a logical business that spends that much time in teams.
You're not getting anything done.
No, you know,
You're too busy
and,
organizing to get stuff done.
and I get that Microsoft is trying to put a bunch of things in front of people's faces to get a business to say, yeah, we do that one, or we do these two, or we do these three. So let's go try Teams. I get what Microsoft is trying to do here, but enough with the meeting everywhere, meeting that's that's part of the problem right now with the hybrid workforce that we're in. 80% or more of what we do can be handled in a 2 sentence email and do not need a 15-minute webcam and microphone session to discuss. So, Microsoft,
It's
I
too
get
much.
it,
It's too
but your
much.
video is not quite realistic.
No, as far as the substance of the actual update, as of now, free users can join work meetings. They can only join them anonymously through, I think, the web browser. However, starting in February, free users will be able to do so right from the Teams desktop app and keep access to the meeting chat after it ends. So, again, if you don't have necessarily, or if you're inviting maybe a client or a customer to your meeting in Teams, they'll have more access to more features through this version. Organizations will still be able to control chats and meeting federations with people who use Teams with a free Microsoft account. However, Teams users with a work account will also be able to join Teams meetings hosted by free users right within the desktop app, eliminating the current redirection to the web browser. So, again, they're just trying to get more people, I guess, using the dedicated app. So the dedicated app just stays open on the desktop, gets more user data that way versus like, hey, jumping back and forth between the browser, closing the browser, and losing full access to certain things. If you're on Windows 11, joining Teams work meetings just by clicking on a link will only work with the Teams for Work app, though. So it won't work with the pre-installed Teams app for consumers, which dumb, da dum dum. Your Outlook calendar or your third-party apps. So again, you'll want to make sure that you understand the difference between the Teams for Work and the Teams that comes pre-installed on devices. So you'll have
I,
to head to. Go
I
ahead.
got an idea. I'm having a little fun here, folks. Why don't we just take the Teams for consumers and press the delete button? That way we stop confusing people as to which team does what, and, and maybe go back to what we used to.
You're
Bring
fired.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't need that kind of talk here. It's ridiculous. Who let Logic Man in there?
And maybe we could bring Skype back over and put it back in its rightful place.
I knew this was an end around. Who let the Skype guy back in this meeting? This is what happens when you have free users jumping into your meetings teams. You get a Skype guy in there.
And let Skype be the consumerish version of Teams, like it's always been, because I work with a lot of various people, and it is becoming more and more amazing on a week to week basis. David, which version of Teams do I need to click on? Well,
Yeah.
this I clicked on Teams. Why can't I join your meeting? Well, you clicked on the consumer version. Well, what's the difference? Well, you
Yeah.
know,
It's very annoying. Our next topic is going to actually be about Microsoft bringing um, its Dev Home app to Windows 10. And this is what I meant about Windows 10 getting basically a second life. They are the dev app is something that was new in Windows 11, I believe, recently.
yeah.
I want to say, was it the end of summer or whatnot? Which basically is an environment dedicated to having features for developers. I think you can go download it from the Microsoft Store now, and now it looks like it's going to be backported to Windows 10. It's in preview right now for Windows 10. But this ties into another story where I want to say Paul Thurrott just recently wrote about it that they are about to open up a Windows 10, reopen up the Windows 10 Insider channel. So yeah, exactly. I had the same reaction. Like, say what? Um, so Windows 10 will now be getting Copilot, a backported version of Copilot. They will be getting an extended security user service for I believe an additional 3 years. They are getting the Windows development environment that was in Windows 11. It was supposed to be exclusive to Windows 11. Then one of the new features in the Moments update, and according to rumors, the Windows 10 Insider channel is coming back. Now, with the way Windows 11's Insider channel is, I don't know if that's a benefit or a loss because they seem to be all over the place. But it seems like Windows 10, like I said, is getting a second life. What do you think?
I think Windows 10 is becoming the Windows 7. That that that
Yeah, I
that
can't disagree with that.
that's where I'm at with it because we're what are we going to have? We're going to have three operating systems here. Think about it. We talk about confusion. We just talked about confusion with Teams. So now we're going to confuse people with Windows because at least the thing with Windows 7 was it didn't see a whole lot of backporting of software once Microsoft declared it the old version. Sure, they supported it, they gave it security updates for those businesses and few consumers out there that just loved Windows 7. I get it, I understand. I liked it too. But now that Microsoft is backing up software saying, they're going to get a remade version of Copilot, we've got this dev home, they're reopening the insider channels. Okay, so we're going to have Windows 10 with new life. We're going to have the current Windows 11 that most places are going to be using. And then we're going to have this thing called Windows 12. I feel like there's too much confusion here. I feel like Windows 11 started the AI thing. We got the little Copilot button and a few other things to kind of get us kicked off into this new AI world that we're going to be in. So let Windows 10 rest in peace. Let's keep Windows 11 and then let's move on to Windows 12. I don't think this is going to be a good move for Microsoft. I think in the end it's going to backfire because when you start giving people too many choices, they start thinking with their wallet, they start thinking based on other factors. Well, this Windows 10 machine will do what we need to do for the next 5 years, so they go buy it. Who says Microsoft is going to support it for the next 5 years, the next 10, or ever how long that is? And then they've got an upset customer down the line. Well, I just bought this and you stopped supporting it. Now I've got to go all the way to Windows 12. I don't like this idea. I just don't like it.
I think that'll be the definitive word on that topic. We don't like it. Um, the next thing we have will be another quick thing, which is I believe Microsoft is testing out support for USB with up to 80 gigabytes per second transfer rate. So for all those devices that we just told you about, for those people who are about to use those super powerful CPUs, the Intel Core 14 Gen XH series mobile processors, that's what this testing is for. They're testing it out on the dev channel, which is ironic because I don't think there are any devices that support it just yet, but they're testing out the feature in the operating system for now. Those 14th gen HX series, I believe, will start becoming available next month. So you'll be able to hop on the insider version of Windows 11 to test this out on those new devices, probably within the next few weeks or so. It's been the first major version update to the USB 4 standard and increase performance in a while. I believe it'll performance up to 80 gigabytes from the 40 gigabytes it was before. So you're going to be having the fidelity of those, if you're testing out gaming or if you're, have a hard drive, an external hard drive that has massive amounts of data, we're talking about terabytes of data trial transfers or whatnot. Those will be done. You won't have to set it down and forget it for like the next 2.5 hours. So we would probably do it within half an hour or so. Uh, there are other things that came within this build that they're testing, which I believe is Microsoft's introducing new share targets with share links from the browser in specific apps. Some of those apps include WhatsApp, Gmail, X or Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. They're also adding, I think they're rolling out to the beta and uh, the beta and dev channels. I don't know the specific version numbers, but it's whatever version came out this week, so you guys can go check that out. And then I think there was one other thing that they updated. I forget what it was. Um, yeah, I think that may be it. I think it's just the USB is of the major things. There are obviously fixes or whatnot, but if you have the latest beta, or if you're in the beta channel or the dev channel, you can go get this update. I don't know how you're going to use it because you don't have the hardware for it necessarily, but you can at least see it. But it's a good sign. Like I said, we're getting more powerful CPUs, and it'd be a shame for that to be the stopgap where it's like, hey, I have all this power, but my device or my operating system won't support me moving it back and forth.
I know
Oh, it
there
should
were.
help with eGPUs. There we go.
Yep, that's where I was going with it. I know there was a lot of people that when I was hearing it discussed in some of the other reports from CES were calling this Thunderbolt 5 because if you remember, Thunderbolt 4, I believe, is the 40 gig, and then they were saying that the Thunderbolt 5 would be the 80 gig. Now, I've not personally seen it referred to as Thunderbolt 5, so if it has been officially referred to as Thunderbolt 5 by Intel, because remember they own the intellectual property, somebody drop that in the comments. I would be
Yeah,
interested to know because we kind of muddied the waters with USB 4 as well because that was kind of the way of getting a non-Intel machine Thunderbolt capabilities. You saw that on a lot of laptops and
mm,
a lot of portable machines, and now we're seeing this upgrade. So at least we, in theory, should be able, like you said, to get GPUs, to get those with video editing workflows that want to buy the external boxes with the PCI connectors. You can do more with your machines. And like you said, if you've got all this power and you can't do anything with it, I kind of start looking at my devices going, why did I buy it?
agreed. And on to our last one, which is the talk of the town, the Asus ZenBook Duo 2024. Not to be mistaken with the Asus Duo in general, because they are wildly different devices. If you didn't know, we have the Duo, which looks a lot like the Lenovo. Oh God, what was it called? I forget the name of it.
Yoga book.
There we go. Yoga Book, correct. And sadly, because I reviewed it, the Lenovo Yoga Book. So this is not that. This is the Asus ZenBook Duo. And like
Well,
I said, it took a lot of people were raving over this thing, and you and I had a private conversation about why. You want to explain to people why we had that doubt in it?
well, let's just take a look at the picture. I'm going to keep this very simple. How portable does that look?
Yeah,
How
for those of
por-
you listening, imagine a laptop turned on its side with an extra keyboard.
exactly? How portable does that look? To me, that looks like a desktop replacement, and maybe that's the way it gets marketed. But if you're going to give me this funny form factor in a laptop, there are several things to think about. How durable is it? How quick is it to set up? Like we discussed in our off topic conversation, I work at a U shaped desk. Just because the PC starts at 9 a.m. on this side doesn't mean by 3 a.m. it's not on the other side. So, how easy is it for things to move around? I get that it's a good thing for video editors being able to put your timeline on one, and maybe the rest of your stuff on another, or even productivity folks to have your teams on one and your spreadsheets on the other. I just don't see the everyday practicality of this device when the cost gets factored in because there is a setup procedure. You're not going to use this on your lap. You're not going to put this big thing on your lap. So, what are you
No,
doing? Are you buying a laptop to sit on your desk with the desktop form factor with monitor mounts these days? That configuration, if that's what you're looking for, I like you Asus, but I gotta say it, that can be configured very easily with a monitor mount and probably half the cost.
yeah, I mean, to its credit, and I believe our friend Dave 2D, he was raving about this thing, and he says he thinks it's the future of computing. I have my questions only because I use the Lenovo version of it. Now, there are some differences. The Lenovo version utilizes a much smaller keyboard. I believe the keyboard takes up two-thirds of the screen. So, for those of you listening, what we're talking about a dual screen device. So, imagine two 14-inch displays connected together by a hinge, as though if you had like the Surface Duo phone and opened up. They could be put in landscape mode, which means that they are monitor over monitor, or they can be put in vertical orientation, or sorry, yeah, horizontal or vertical orientations, which they means they'd be side by side. Either way, there you could use an on-screen keyboard, which would be like PEC typing essentially, if you're used to that kind of thing, or you can use these attachable ones. The Lenovo one, like I said, is two-thirds of the screen, doesn't cover the entire thing. For the Asus one, it does. It's the full length of it. So I guess that's the benefit of it. It does tuck nicely into the device. One of the advantages of the ZenBook versus the Yoga Book was that the Yoga Book needed a origami folding cover in order to stand it up if you're going to use it
Yep.
as a laptop or monitor over monitor kind of setup. The ZenBook has a kickstand built in, a very solid metal kickstand built into this thing. So again, less moving parts. Still too many because you have a Bluetooth attached keyboard. You'll have a pin that comes in the box. To your topic about pricing, this is another benefit and difference between the Yoga Book. Yoga Book was a bit expensive. It came with a pin, I believe, but and the keyboard. But for the ZenBook Duo, I believe for $1,500, you get a backpack, you get a carrying case, you get the pin and the keyboard as well. It's the backpack alone could be factored in as kind of a plus for a lot of people who see this device as a very niche thing that they don't put in their regular backpack. And this is my, if I'm going to go to the coffee shop and be a weirdo and edit video like this,
You're
I
gonna
take
be
my
a
weirdo
weirdo, all
backpack.
right.
Yeah, I take my weirdo backpack. I don't take my normal backpack. I get the weirdo backpack that's provided by Asus. That's the benefit of that versus like having to put this Lenovo one into your actual backpack. So I guess that's the pluses or minuses. I just don't see, like you said, to the point. These are very niche things, and they don't add the same sort of benefit as companies who are trying to push foldables are doing. Because again, the idea is that we've gotten used to our screen size, and we had no way of expanding that and being mobile with it. So the foldable does that. We've already adapted to expanding our laptops. Well, like you said, a monitor mount, a docking station, these kind of things. Like we know how to expand our laptop already. I don't think people are in need of expanding it on the go, so to speak, because again, it's a lapped
So
experience or a desktop experience. And when you start to put it on a table or a desk, you know what peripherals you need to be useful with that. The apps don't operate differently like they do from going from a slab phone to a foldable. Like there are just more menus, there are more things, more interaction buttons to operate with. When now that you have more screen real estate, the apps, like Adobe Premiere, works the same way essentially as it would on the big screen. You could already separate your timeline and dedicate certain space to it. If you want an entire one to do editing or something like that, how well are you doing that on the go? We know Windows hasn't broken the hump of hours long productivity in that aspect. So now you're dedicating more resources to another OLED screen, 4K potentially in some of these devices. That power drain is going to be relative. I think you're not going to get as much done as you think you would, even having that added screen. I see, like you said, there are more negatives for the average user than there are positives for the niche user.
well, I tell you what, there's an easy way to solve this equation. Asus, if you're watching, you have two guys here that are not trashing your product.
No.
We're just interested in how it works. So if you're interested, reach out, send us a review unit, and we will be happy to put it through its paces and
Oh yeah.
maybe go back on some of the things that we're talking about here because all we have right now is imagery to go off of, and this reminds me of the last ZenBook Duo. The laptops that had the elevated screen, and then they slid the keyboard down and moved the trackpad to the right. Video editors eventually loved those on about the second version. The first version was kind of a gimmick. The hinge didn't work so well. The second version they kind of picked up on. This, I just I need to be shown how they intend it to be used.
Oh,
Now,
and that was the other thing in my review is that the software, unfortunately, Windows 11 isn't ready for these type of devices yet. Just
true.
like it wasn't ready for tablet. It can be forced on these devices because again, you're just basically expanding the display. But I think there needs to be specific like OS level optimizations for these devices. And again, I feel like this is where Microsoft has let down Lenovo, has let down Asus to a certain extent. You need perhaps you need a marketplace for these type of apps that work on these type of devices more easily, stuff you can get into, pairing ways to pair certain things, so that when you open it up, this beyond the setup of, all right, let me open up the keyboard, let me take it off the screen, let me, kick open the kickstand, let me flip up the top. By the time you get to the, let me get into my workflow, your pairings are already there. Like I have, Photoshop on top, and I have, my whatever else I'm rendering from the bottom on the bottom, or my timeline's the full screen bottom, and the video feed that I'm using is always at the top, or 3D rendering of whatever aspect, and the base model that you're referencing are on two different screens. Like these things kind of automatically open up. Like that's the kind of stuff that Microsoft needs to build into Windows to make these things more effective. Because right now it's a very manual process, which is why I'm saying the niche benefits don't outweigh the average consumer's usage for right now.
And maybe down the line it does. Maybe down the line what we tend to do when we produce these devices at CES, there's always and Asus is usually one of them. There's always companies that bring these, I call them prototype devices. Do they end up on the market? Yes. They do produce them. They do put them out for sale. Are they things that I see in Best Buy for the average consumer? No, not normally. It's usually something they make a few of them, and I have to buy them directly from ASUS or somewhere like CDW or, you know, uh, B&H Photo or someplace like that, that carries these things. And usually 2 or 3 years down the line, if it's a product that meant to be, they revisit it and go, "Hey, this is the new version of this product," and it gains some traction if that's a form factor that people want to deal with. For example, the folding phone. Years ago, Samsung came to CES and they showed off the concept of the folding phone. Some people said wow, some people said no. Now we're on the Z Fold 5, about to be the Z Fold 6 most likely, and folding phones are getting some traction. We've got the Samsung version, we've got the Google version, we've got the OnePlus version, and there's probably 2 or 3 that are less known brands that I'm not thinking about. So this is Asus's take on it. If there's some interest, we've seen Lenovo's take. Now we'll see Dell's take, we'll see HP's take, and we'll see if this is a form factor that people want to compute in. Right now, could I see it working for certain people? Can I maybe work it in such a way that something happens with that top screen to where when I need it to be just a laptop, it can be just a laptop, and the top screen be safe where I'm not breaking it in some way, where it's not playing a factor, and then maybe when I get to the office, I can open up the second screen. Maybe there's all kinds of ways this could go, but right now I think this, like you said, this is a niche device that some people are going to buy, some people are going to love it, and then we'll wait for the next version.
Yeah, and we're about to wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry we keep you this long. One last story, which is a smaller device. I don't actually have a headline for it. I apologize for that, but it just came to mind when I was thinking about it. Is Lenovo has a Android powered, Windows powered
Yes,
tablet
forgot about that
slash
thing.
laptop device. This thing is gotten no attention, so I thought we'd put it here. Let me see if I can pull up the actual name of it, because again
Let
I
me
wrote
just go ahead and say, folks, I want one right off the bat.
about.
When you were the one that put that up on the site, and
Yes.
it brings back memories of one of the Microsoft products that I wanted one so bad that I never got the chance to own, the Surface Book.
Yes.
You know,
Here we
I
go.
I wanted one of, yes, that's our buddy.
It is the ThinkBook Plus Gen 5 hybrid. Uh, and again, when I was first writing about it, I got confused about it because it starts off looking like an Android tablet.
Uh-huh.
But as you mentioned, when docked into the keyboard itself, so very much like the Surface Book, it becomes a Windows device. Now it has the hardware for both, which means that you don't get an underpowered Windows device necessarily, or an overpowered Android device. It will utilize it when it's in whichever mode. Now you can force Android experience on the desktop version of it.
Mhm.
And I think it does so through it's a new software that Lenovo is using that basically virtualizes Android on the Windows device itself. But it's, like I said, it's supposed to be a really nice device. It's 14 inches. It has a 2.8 K OLED display with touch and pen support. It's Lenovo, so they'll probably put the pen in the box for you guys. That's another benefit. DCI P3 support, about 100%. Like I said, it'll be powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus chip when with Android 13 out of the box. And in the Android version of it, the tablet version of it, it supports 128 gigabytes of memory as well as 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. When it's docked in the hybrid station, which is when it turns into Windows, it'll be powered by an Intel Core Ultra 7 processor, which is, again, something Intel was talking about a lot this year at CES. Windows 11, 32 gigabytes of memory, 1 terabyte of up to 1 terabyte of SSD storage, and Intel's Arc GPU. So, I mean, for all accounts, it is a Windows device when it has the keyboard, and an Android tablet when you need an Android tablet to pull, 14-inch Android tablet screen. I just wanted to make sure we talked about that because I felt like
Yes.
nobody else was talking about it at CES.
And that one, and there's also one more. I want to take people down memory lane, and I do not have, like you did, I do not have a link to this. Maybe it's in your post there. Does anybody remember the Lenovo Twist?
Yes, I do.
Years ago, that the screen would twist in a circle, and they made a big deal out of it because you could, show the screen to the person across the desk. I don't remember the model of Lenovo that came out, but there was something at CES where that's being reintroduced. And I'm going to pick on our young folks for a minute. The young YouTubers were just ranting and raving over it, and I'm sitting there looking at the photos. I'm like, I saw this back in 1998, 99, 2001, 2002. When they tried that in their business line of PCs, and it was a very successful product for Lenovo. So, you know, Lenovo's, been good to us. They allow us to review a lot of their products, so we try to give them as much, coverage as we can. But one thing I will say, they are very innovative when they do things, and I'm not going to criticize, any other manufacturer out there, but I like seeing products like this, the two-in-one. A device that will do more than one thing for me gets my attention. And when I saw this, I was like, here's the credit card. Just charge whatever you need to and get it shipped and get it headed this way because I think that could be a very popular device for some folks because there's a lot of people out there, just like what we were just talking about with the Asus. I work during the day. I need my PC. I need my processor. I'm on the couch at night. I want to stream. I want to surf. I want to play a little bit. Maybe answer an email. I undock that thing. Now I've got a tablet in my hand that will handle those tasks for me. And when I go back to work the next morning, put it right back on the dock, go right back to work. I think this might be a good idea.
I think you might be right, my friend. The only time it didn't work for everyone was Windows 8. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh boy,
Yeah. With
we
that being
don't have
said,
we don't have enough time left in this podcast to go
no,
down that road.
no. Again, we'll have to do a documentary on what happened with Windows 8. We'll maybe talk to Steven Sinofsky somewhere. With that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining us for another week of news. We hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will catch you next week with more information. I did talk to my partner about getting on Threads. I don't know if he did it or not, but if
I
he's not on
forgot.
Threads, where can people find you?
All right, folks. All right, Kareem. I need I need one more reminder, buddy. You did your
Okay.
job last week. You did your job last week. I need you to do it one more time for me.
All right. I will
For,
try.
for this week, I am David PAJ1978 on Twitter. It is still Twitter to me. Sorry. All right. Next week, I hope to be. David PAJ 1978 on Threads.
Who knows? Fingers crossed, everyone. You can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling that. Not for long. I am enjoying my engagement on Threads. It is less about politics and war and more about comics and being mindful about just being present in the day. So, if you want to talk about that kind of stuff, find me on Threads. Other than that, go to our website, read some of the stuff we wrote. We'll also be having some clips and stuff shared on our social medias, on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram, on YouTube, or whatnot. So we'd love to conversate and hang out with you guys on any of those platforms. Until then, enjoy your week.
Have a good weekend, folks. We'll see you next week.